Yuan Tong Ling Ming. So wonderful to see you guys. Looks like Christmas is, or Hanukkah, or whatever else is being celebrated around the world, is making people busy. But little by little, we are dropping in. So it is time for Ling Yuan again. How was your week with the daily Ling Yuan practice? Are you slowly growing into it? Or are you deeply into your process like I am? Are you still in the process of putting it into your daily day, into every day, into your how you're spending the day every day? It's okay. It's a process of development, remember? So last week we've been doing unfounded suspicion, meaning until today it'll switch over. And I had a really interesting process again. And it's very interesting because about 2.5 days ago, my false self really tried to sneak its way in. And opposite to the usual way of responding to it, it was different this time for me. So I'm going to share that real quick, hoping that this will help you as well a lot. So since we started this 30 weeks plus 30 patterns process all together, and people are joining as well more and more, which is really beautiful to see that we, all of us together, can inspire others to get going with looking at those patterns, which is really not a very easy process, isn't it? And so since the beginning of this whole process, for me personally, information has been coming very fast in the week's process. And so basically the first 2, 3, 4 days into it, it seemed that the main information that was hidden in the consciousness depth somewhere came up. And I would experience really beautiful, calm, inner peace for most of these times. And then this week, I caught on the false self in the moment it wanted to intercept itself again. Obviously, my consciousness preparing the Chi field for today's web class and the next week's process. And so information for this pattern today: negativity, withdrawal, inactivity, and pessimism. And that's exactly what came up for me 2 days ago. It started in the evening. So it's just been one evening. Towards the evening, I thought, where has my state gone? Like I said, since the beginning of this journey, of this 30 weeks plus 30 patterns, I've experienced these long periods of inner peace and calm, yeah? And then 2 days ago in the evening, it was just gone. And I actually wasn't even aware for the first few moments. And then it was like, wow, all my fears are back. Meaning my main issue of, so the fear of showing myself and not avoiding and hiding anymore in being a consciousness teacher out there in the world, the fear of, not being loved by a partner, the fear of not knowing how to live of this, teaching this stuff financially, because it's quite difficult. And so they were all back in one at once. And all I felt was first just this really grumpiness. And that's what I became aware of in the first few moments. Grumpy, feeling stressed, being teary-eyed, not from gratitude, but from, feeling the pressure inside. And then I was like, hold on a moment. It's not that those fears are completely back. Trust in your process. That was the first thought that was sort of positive. And since the trigger of these patterns, since the activation of these patterns, and I thought, that's an interesting, really intriguing way or thing for me to go, hey, trust, they're not back. This is just the false self trying to do something right now. It tries to get you back into its grips. And I'm like, oh, but why all of them all of a sudden? All of them at once. And as you practice Ling Yuan, in a more free flow way, like we do now, if you're not completely comfortable yet because you're new to this class today, that's fine. Just try it out today. Just go with it and then go back in the web classes. A few numbers back, I'm explaining the whole process, and we also practice in the standard way a few times first. If you're new to Yuan Ming Free Flow today. So when you practice in the free flow way, you will see when you do your practice every day, eventually your consciousness becomes so used to, and this forms and becomes a new pattern. And this is one of the healthy patterns, right? Because that's what we do mainly, right? Replacing unhealthy patterns with healthy ones. Because your consciousness is your consciousness, and you cannot replace that one or get rid of it or kill it. Human life functions through human Shen and Yi. And so we have to build new brain nerves, neurological pathways, new patterns through which we then function. And as I'm thinking these three thoughts of, why all of them at once, all of my major construction places, if you like, so my individual fundamental patterns seem to have activated themselves at once. And the thought of, okay, trust, it's a process. And then I had the next thought. And the next thought was, so what I was observing is that my consciousness went into the process of Ling Yuan, completely natural, right there, right in my grumpy, teary-eyed, sort of also disappointment to feel not this freedom again in my heart, seemingly having lost my happy, free, and deeply calm place. That was actually one of the biggest issues, like the disappointment about that. That's just an old pattern as well, right? And I was like, okay, trust this process. This is interesting. My heart just asked this question, you know, I have lost you, I can't find you, how do I get you back? So it was almost like there were three people. So there was my true self, there was my false self, and there was my heart. And the false self was interacting with the with the heart, going, please, heart, will you please ask a question and give it to Shen, my true self. So the false self, just to capture it back up in one together, remember the false self is our identification with the false partial information within the universe. Yeah, it's the patterned automatic information. So that one actually had some awareness about this must be, or it was the true self that had the awareness. But I know that I, the patterned person, had asked my heart to ask a question. And then that's what my heart did, or that's what I was able to do, to go back into my heart. And I know this is because of the process we have been doing together, this daily Ling Yuan practice, no matter what. And so my heart asked, what can I do? What is this about? What can I do for you? And what do I actually need? And then I felt the true self, or, me connecting back to the chi field, the universe, and I felt myself receiving a really, really quiet information, a really quiet voice. Pretty much, well, it's not really a voice, right? It was just information coming the way it does for me in Ling Yuan. And it was about, hey, this is just your consciousness preparing for negativity, already working for, building the chi field, and already working for the web class today, in building the chi field for the web class today. And this has to happen. It's just a deeper process of old information coming up. And so I was able to get to a sort of calm state. It wasn't a calm state yet, or the calm state I had known before, but it was a sort of contentment with, okay, I'm in a process, and I feel the uncomfortableness. I can feel the fears, but I I I will trust that there's something shifting, and I will just keep observing it. And so then yesterday morning, so this happened 2 days ago in the evening, right? And then it became yesterday morning. And then so I wiggled about, I did my practice, and what I mean is I wiggled about, sorry, means I went to the toilet, did my morning business, and, observed myself how I had a few other things to do, seemingly, that were more important than practice. that day. And then I was like, no, there's actually nothing more important. Just sit down. Feeling all the time this really uncomfortableness, right? Waking up with the thoughts of the false self, of the patterns, really feeling it, and then really observing that interesting aspect of unfounded suspicion, the closed circuit thinking that we have heard last week about. Yeah. And then I was able to connect the dots of how unfounded suspicion activates negativity in a way. So I have gone back and reversed the information I had worked through the first 3 or 4 days, everything that came up for me in my Ling Yuan practice about unfounded suspicions, and gently allowed the negativity, withdrawal, inactivity, and pessimism pattern to join into the observation. The state got better, but it stayed a little bit, let's say, unstable. I had to check back in like every half an hour with myself and had to allow the replacement information into my mind, actually. I mean, I had other things to do than sitting in practice all day with closed eyes. So it was a constant having to restore the balance, but I was able to do it. And then I was in this place of balance. And then, you know, the fears, the patterns, the ideas or the thoughts would come back, or the feeling of uncomfortableness. And I just kept replacing and reinserting the information I found the night before. There was keep trusting the process, keep trusting the process. It is working through something more. And that doesn't mean you have regressed. It only means that there is some deeper connections. Remember the cluster patterns, right? And trusting that, and don't worry about it, about this today. There's no need to be disappointed. Just let them be there. So again, acceptance, right? And so I saw the connections into, right, this is the pattern of avoiding and hiding, the need to accept our things that we are not so content with just yet with ourselves, and to allow that, and but not falling into the insecurity, which is like the main feature of the pattern avoiding and hiding, no? And so I just let that be that day. And then I was allowed to do a few sessions. And then, yeah, just was there and went to sleep, and not being as tortured as usually. And woke up today in the morning and sat up and did the Ling Yuan. And that's when it finally worked through. I did a long practice. Um, there was nothing else I wanted to do. And I was so grateful for that. And the gratitude has drawn me again even deeper. Why I knew this time that there was something deeper going on is because in the beginning of the week during Ling Yuan, like I said, the information about unfounded suspicion came very fast, and I worked with it. And I reached, I went into a state where I had many Shen lights in my head. You know, we call them in Ren Xue, we call them Shen lights. And that means when the consciousness is very clear and you are very deeply unified, and then Qi starts showing up in your head as very bright lights. They are more like very bright fog fields moving through your head, and they're very beautiful. You feel incredibly nice. I guess this is why the false self felt it had to try to come back a little bit more. And thanks to the process of this daily Ling Yuan, there was some awareness of the true self staying within the activated patterns. So there was a little progress, and that little tiny progress was enough, obviously, to be staying with my trust that this is a development. I'm hoping this will help you a lot. I hope, because the nature of the patterns that Jans actually talked about it in this retreat, right? Just a few weeks back, the stubbornness and how they keep returning and how deeply ingrained they are. The seven um, features of patterns, so to speak, if you remember. And why it is so difficult to work with them. So this trust, and obviously this is part of unfounded suspicion, right? And overall, a basic lack of trust and openness is one of the features of the manifestations of unfounded suspicions. So after the big long practice today in the morning, I went out for a walk, and I would have to say that in the walk, connecting with nature, listening to the song of today, Shake It Out, there was a deep, there was a realization. And it really is a bit funny because it seems so obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me first. So for me, this is now really, it's funny because there was this awareness of, you dummy. So talking to myself, right, inside of myself, you dummy, you don't need to trust unconditionally all the patternedness of humans. It was about, so it was about the negativity that I have towards humanity, the pessimism of we'll never get out of this muck that we're in, and we seem to be too deep within all the systems all the systems of society, and how are we getting out? And how can I keep trusting humans? Because honestly, that is what was ruling me this week, the unfounded suspicion of trusting humanity as a whole, trusting the masses of people to transform and to change. Yeah, and during the walk, it literally a few hours before we switch over into negativity, there was this deep, profound knowing that all you have to do is to trust the true selves of everybody. Everybody has a true self, and in the true self, we are united, and we are clear, and we are peaceful, and we are relaxed, and in this calm, loving, supportive state for each other. And we are one then, actually, and your true self is them and them is you. So do you trust your own true self? And of course, yeah, we can do that. And I know it seems so silly, it seems so simple. We can unconditionally trust everybody's true self. um, I hope I share that in my heart. It was this big aha moment for me. And, this big, difficult question that I'm having since I'm 5 years old, consciously trying to figure out in my, in my life. Um, and of course, all the patterns that I have, the unhealthy patterns I have developed towards humanity, it seems to have been solved today on the walk, very with being very clear how it all is connected and tied into the work. But this obvious, simple answer, there's no problem in trusting unconditionally at all. Everybody trusts that, what you wanted, And we in Ren Xue, obviously, we're all in this, because otherwise you wouldn't sit in a Ren Xue class and you wouldn't study and practice Ren Xue and Yuan Gong and Yuan Ming, which all is Ren Xue. You want freedom, right? I wanted freedom, nothing more than freedom from inside. And I wanted, inner peace. And everybody wants that. Every other manifestation that is not this peaceful, calm, unified, supporting each other, connectedness, this oneness is just patterns. I don't need to trust those. All I need to do is trust the true self. It's very simple. Okay, so thanks for listening with that. I hope this will help you too. And I'm really keen on finding out and observing how I will live, how my life will go from now on with this with this realization. And that brings us to today's topic. So I've chosen the song before class so that whenever you cannot break through an activated pattern, songs can do something. Because often, when as we are getting closer and closer to the true self through this process of practicing Ren Xue together, of course, like I often said, the forces of the opposite become stronger. So the more calm, relaxed, and natural you become, the more unified you are until you are self-realized. The false self will try to come back stronger for a while. It is really important to know about that process, and it's really important to hear that from others as well. Because when everybody says, "Oh, I feel so great, everything is so great all the time," that is not truly the total part of this process. When you are in this process of replacing the unhealthy patterns and coming more and more to unification and oneness, the law of the universe is opposition and unification. And until oneness has happened, the opposition, the opposite side of unification, will come back stronger sometimes to, give us more drive, more driving force. We need the pressures, the challenges, the problems. We need them. They are the reason for why we want to find out more and learn. And they are what inspire us to find out what unification is and how to deepen it. They are what inspire us to practice. And it's important to know that and to hear that, because I'm in contact with most of you or many of you throughout the week. and the weeks. And so there is no need to be disappointed in things that don't feel comfortable or things that do not seem to go one in one with relaxed, calm, natural inner peace and oneness. Um, they are natural until oneness has happened. And then it's just one thought and you can grab it. Mm. It is not only you that doesn't seem to be always be able to balance every pattern immediately. It is quite normal. Um, so when you cannot get into this process, from your heart or your Shen, or when the opposition forces come stronger at, in this hour, in that moment, in that day, um, then sometimes we do know that if we would now go and sit down and do a Ling Yuan, if we would now go and unify with the universe, if we would now do some pulling chi or do some squats, or if we would do a Ren Yuan or a Sha Yuan or yeah, anything, any of the 9 methods basically. But at least, I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes when that false self tries to reinsert itself into my life so strongly, um, practice is the farthest from what the false self wants. And when you're in the false self, in the story, in the identification of the false story of your mind, then often it comes with the resistance to practice. And this is when songs come in very handy because music is touching on is touching us on so many levels, is touching us on these ancient ways of being with one another and being free with one another. Yeah, the art of music and sound has connected us through eons, really, right? Through the ages, the millennial, the millennium, the millennials, millennial, the millennium, through the millennia. Ha, I found it. And so this is why I keep always taking a few minutes to talk about the song or to, that's why I put the song in there. So because the songs can give you a little push maybe. So if you don't want to practice, but you are aware that you don't feel good, not comfortable, and you are aware, okay, this is probably a pattern, but what do I do right now? I'm having resistance. I'm in avoiding and hiding to making it better. Well, maybe I can listen to a song, and today's song, Shake It Out from the show. It's a TV show called Smash. It's about musical actors and musical singers and their life. And I don't know if you know it, but my brother has made this education and can do that sort of thing. And so, well, I really love musicals and as you know, Disney movies and stuff. So the song is going a little bit like this. It's really hard to dance with the devil on your back. So shake it out. And so this was the inspiration also for the picture today and for this web class, for this week's web class. The the gnome, of course, we all know there is no devil. I guess in a way for us, the devil would be the patterns, the unhealthy patterns on the consciousness level that make us, locked in and be like a puppet to a puppeteer and write without much free will, really, seemingly. So, as we know, negativity is interesting. We will hear about it right away when we look at what Janse has to say about it. So, negativity, withdrawal, inactivity, and pessimism pattern, this one basically has its fingers in all the other patterns as well. And so when we realize that we can realize that we can shake them out through Ling Yuan practice and through Cha. And by the way, next week Cha workshop of be the master of your own state with Janse, and that's on Saturday for us in Europe, for you guys on Sunday in New Zealand, if you're in New Zealand. And the next day we will do the pattern of fixed expectations, false assumptions, taking things for granted. And there's one more word, fixed expectations, taking things for granted, preconceptions, and doesn't come to me right now, but that's a big thing already. So we'll look at that so we can then work through the Christmas time or whatever you are celebrating. New Year's only or Hanukkah, whatever. So if you're stuck in patterns and you don't know how yet and you don't know how to do it, you can listen to that song. It's a bit peppy. It's, it's not calm, relaxed, and natural, which when you already have resistance towards practice, then you're probably, when you're in the false self so much, then the false self doesn't want to be calm, relaxed, and natural. And it actually isn't possible anyway, really, to be calm, relaxed, and natural. So that peppy song, shake it out, shake it out. Then that could maybe bring you in the swing of get your heart going, get your music's doing that to us, doesn't it? Music is opening our heart somehow, and then you might be able to get through and just let it be for a moment and listen to the song and nothing else, and be inspired by the lyrics. And then you might be ready and willing again to relax, to be calm, and to look at what's coming up, to face at what's actually going on inside. Okay, so let's unify together. We are going to do the preparation for Ling Yuan now, and then I will read the text and we'll look into some other aspects of it or whatever comes up for me within the text, and then we're going to do the practice. Today, I will actually add one more thing at the end of the practice. As you know, if you have participated before in the last few practices when we did the free flow version of Ling Yuan, meaning we read the stories, or we hear the questions in the beginning of the practice, all of them, and then we hear a little thing about surrender, about the true self, surrendering to the true self, and then comes the silence in which you self autonomously work and let your heart and Shen Yi work together through whatever information needs to come up, and observing it and going forth and back between the questions if necessary, and just letting your consciousness and heart flow freely through this process. And then I used to get you out with the heart sound of Sha Yuan, just because when we are in such a deeply unified state and observing together, noise can really be startling to some people. And I figured the heart sound might bring you gently into your heart as a group, since when you practice Ling Yuan this way with a group, how do you end? Everybody's process is so individual, yeah, and everybody's process is also so different from day to day. So sometimes we can sit only 20 or 30 minutes, and sometimes we have the need for sitting 2, 3, or 4 hours, depending on how deep you are slipping into the unification. And so today, I will try it this way, to simply stop the recording and stop the live class, and you can sit in silence as long as you want. Yeah, maybe you have stopped earlier already than me, but then I will not disturb you in your process. So once the information from Shen has started to roll, um, this is not for everybody so easy. It's not, for everybody. Just push the button and Shen will bring you the information that you need. And the chi field of this class has become more and more powerful as the Ren Xue chi field is growing every day. And so what I hear from people is that the process is really starting to work for them. And so when we are in the live class, although we are not many people doing the live class, there's way more people watching the recordings. But when we are in this process, right, and imagine there's information really important to your life coming up, and then I'm closing it all down, it's not always easy to stay in the unified state, sound and or, someone asking you to do the head and face is definitely going to bring you further, a little bit further out of the unification to some degree, which is important that we don't fall into the polarized thinking here too much about we have to have it totally silent for practice. No, we can prepare our consciousness for sounds during any practice sessions. And then, of course, our consciousness and heart are prepared and we won't get startled. This is really important actually to do before you practice if you don't have a completely soundproof room. But Ling Yuan is a really I'm just gonna go ahead and call it special process. The unification is very deep, and because the intention in the chi field of Ling Yuan itself is so much honesty and so much motivation and so much courage as well, because we are really and truly facing the challenges of our life. We really, there's this big commitment of our time and space and the willingness to just sit there and observe and let come up all that we used to think was painful. And we are going into this really open and trustful state and allowing the replacement information to come in, allowing to connect the dots. Also, because we give this commitment, I'm tearing up again, but because of gratitude right now, I'm so touched of Gongqing. I'm so in awe of the universe. So we give our commitment to this honest facing. And we receive from the universe this deeper, unified state, a deeply unified state. And in that state, you won't worry too much about you should actually be somewhere else. You won't need to go back to your scheduled day too much, and I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do that. Your false self doesn't have much place in this state of being. It's really beautiful. And you receive that as a gift from the universe for your commitment to allow unification to happen for Ling Yuan. So I don't want to disturb it either, honestly. And just sit, just sit. It doesn't matter how long you want to sit. It comes from within you. You will know when the process is ready. And just remember, please, to do some form of drawing back to your heart. Store the information after you've gone through the stages of affirming and accepting the new patterns into your life, inviting the new patterns into your life through the Wuxin. Then go ahead and draw back the information with the conscious thought of storing it. So you from now on live from that state onwards and not from the other old unhealthy patterns. And then if you need to, tap down your legs, make sure before you get up that you can stand up, and maybe do the head and face before you open your eyes. Okay, so today I will sit with you until my process is done naturally, and then I will just stop the web class. And you can keep sitting until your process is done naturally and in a free flow. Okay. I'm just thinking of a really interesting aspect right now for everybody who doesn't watch this live. That's one of the positive qualities of doing the live class. It's a funky thought, I have to tell you. So when you are watching this recording on YouTube, I've just been thinking, what happens when the next YouTube video then just starts up naturally? So maybe if you're watching this now and you are watching a recording, then maybe go into the settings of your YouTube and stop the automatic play, the autoplay. So no other movie or no other video will start playing while you're deep in the process of Ling Yuan when I just stop the class here in the live class this way. Wow, I'm really stoked about this right now. That's Shen just making me helps making me think of others in a different situation than we are in right now in the live class. Okay, I hope this wasn't too confusing. So, are you ready? Let's get ready. If you've been lying down, if you can, of your physical condition, please sit up, lifting from Bai Hui. Looking straight forward. Drawing your vision back. Lifting from Bai Hui and relaxing down. Relax all the way down. Relax your body. Relax your heart. Awareness inside of yourself. You are turning into chi. Keep relaxing. Think of Hui Yin and lift Hui Yin. To lower dantian and expand out into the universe. Keep opening out. Becoming one with the universe, drawing back in, drawing chi and information from the universe, letting it flow in. Connect with love and compassion. And send it out into the universe with awe. Give your Gongqing to the universe and then let it come back. The love and support of the universe. And start to do dantian breathing. Feel your dantian open and close with your inhale and exhale. Observe how your dantian expands and contracts with your breath. Feel the chi inside. Now allow the awareness from dantian to spread out, spread upwards into your heart. Awareness in your heart. Send your awareness out into the universe, into the heavens. Draw the awareness into the earth and all nature, all beings of nature. And then send your heart and consciousness out to all humans. They all are teachers with infinite wisdom. Tell yourself, I open my shinmen to love and trust them unconditionally. With gratitude in my heart, I receive their love and wisdom, and I unify with it. My Shen, E, and Shin, my true self, my consciousness, and my heart are fully aligned with the light of Tao. I have surrendered to the laws of the universe. With Gongqing, realization and wisdom are arising. I am one with the light and the wisdom of the universe. Feel your calmness. Now feel the indescribable vitality inside of your heart. and yourself. Feel that vitality in the courage to face yourself. Feel the joy in that for yourself. Feel your creativity. Feel your free will. Feel your desire to change yourself and to grow. Now let's listen with our hearts and observe with our hearts and Shen Yi to the information about negativity, pessimism, withdrawal, and inactivity. And if you need to, you can lay down during this process so you can be completely relaxed for the duration of this happening. The origins at the background for the pattern of negativity, withdrawal, inactivity, and pessimism. In short, negativity. This pattern has a very special place among all the patterns. We can say, in a broad sense, that all the 10 fundamental patterns, as well as all other unhealthy patterns, have this quality. Our discussion in this chapter, though, will focus on this particular pattern in a narrow sense. The evolution and development of the human species is part of origins and background. So the evolution and development of the human species, since the quality of negativity is common to both the pattern of negativity and to all other unhealthy patterns, it shares the same origins and developmental background as the patterns discussed previously. So connect with the thousands and thousands of years that we humans have lived since we have been born without fur and claws or knowledge, without big jaws that can, be useful for hunting, and no protection from anywhere. Go back in time, allow yourself to connect with your origins and background, as we have learned in the previous classes, in those previous sessions about the patterns. Imagine yourself for a moment not knowing how to gather food and how to gather information about your life in a way that, knowing where herds are coming through, the big unknown in front of you, not knowing how to make fire, not knowing how to carry it, and now connect with the 190,000 years, give or take, in which we learned the basic things, and then the last 10,000 years of civilizations, more evolving into more material security, into being someone who is dwelling, who is planting food, who is harvesting food, who knows about where which animals live and how to hunt them. So this is what we refer to the origins and background of all patterns, yeah? One point worth mentioning for this particular pattern, negativity, is that in ancient times, when a person suffered an injury, this person would most likely physically withdraw for the purpose of self-protection, healing, and recovery. Similarly, on the mental level, withdrawal, fear, suspicion, and antagonism being enemies, could be experienced. Even the desire to attack, to retaliate, or to destroy was possible. These negative responses, after having been reinforced generation after generation after generation, resulted in the gradual development and establishment of the pattern of negativity, withdrawal, inactivity, and pessimism. Yeah. So as you are lying there with your closed eyes, listening and going on this journey of who you've been in the past, you know, when we look at it from the perspective of Ren Xue, our understanding is that we have experienced this kind of life because we have been, going through life in a certain form, then transitioning without a body into a next different form, and then transitioning again, still being alive in a formless form as information and much more subtle material, mainly the chi of the universe. And then again, reforming and identifying with the body, and still the consciousness being part of this form of the body. So as you're now lying in this almost like a time travel, remember that you have experienced these sorts of living conditions. Remember a time where you've been lying hurt, maybe alone on a hunt, maybe having left back, having left behind, or nobody knowing how to help you. Nobody knows much yet about maybe healing plants, or about there's definitely no hospital to go to, no doctor to go to, no therapist to go to. Nobody knows more than you, and you are in this state. We survived that, didn't we? We wouldn't be here today if we wouldn't have survived as a species. And also, please reinsert this information as a replacement information that see how safe you really are. You may have lived in those times back then. You're still alive today. If you wouldn't be alive, you couldn't hear this. Connect with the true nature of your life. So you have more compassion for yourself when you have fears, or when you feel sick and you have fears or worries about it, or when you have the fear that your sickness will not go away again, will not pass, will not become a thing of the past. It will. You are here now, aren't you? Can you find the trust in your heart about that? Can you? It's good to connect so consciously with the true nature of our lives, doesn't it? Or isn't it? So have compassion when this pattern or any of the other patterns is activated inside of you. Have compassion for yourself and also have compassion for the others. They are just patterned humans. Another aspect of the origins and background is the basic instincts and needs on the level of human nature. When the basic needs of human nature are not satisfied, they can become driving forces for negative thoughts or behavior. So remember the natural instinct, birth, growth, death, eating, drinking, eliminating waste, sleep, and to procreate sexually. The survival instinct, the self-serving self-interest, the sense of security that we need, the fear of death, and the owning or controlling more resources than that we need for survival and life. Remember your social nature, that we are not completely independent of society or others, that it's not possible to exist without relationships for a human being. Remember your social nature in the establishment and manifestation of your role or your place in society, and the manifestation of serving one's own or your group's interests. Remember your needs beyond the instinctual, the physical level. The need to be respected, approved by others, and approved by yourself. The need to be loved, to be helped, to be supported, to be treated kindly, to be trusted. Remember that you need to feel victorious, successful, and to be needed by others. Remember your need for freedom, for justice, for fairness. And remember your need for a sense of value and a meaning or a purpose. Remember your needs for retainment and extension and continuation. The retainment of your body, your chi, your shen, your brain, your heart, and your soul. Remember that all of the manifestations of your life and the activities of your Shen and your consciousness, of your human nature, they will all be retained. So all the needs of all the lives you've lived will be retained in the Qi. This is one reason for why we practice Ling Yuan, to go into a deeper state where we ask Shen to give us information from our the totality of our life. So we can have access to overcome the fears of this gathered information of past experience. Remember, your nature is being malleable, the malleability of your life. That human nature is neutral in its form, but it can be formed in whatever we need. We can self-reinvent. We have done so in history and in our patterns of consciousness. The information in the chi field and in other people and society also can change. And we can change our value system, and so we can change our future life. Remember your ability for the aspiration for the better. It's part of your human nature. Human nature wants to be good and better. We want to increase our moral and ethical values and standards. We want to increase our essential quality that drives individuals and humanity to make progress. Remember that our life experience and our Jing is always aspiring for the better and changing. Remember another part of the human nature, your Jing, your spiritual life, so to speak, your spiritual aspect, to be relaxed, to be calm and natural, your need as a basic state. Remember your need on that Jing level for freedom, autonomy, self-control, self-awareness, and to be noble. Remember your need that you can transcend reality from your false self to your true nature, your true self, your Wushin, and your special abilities. And remember your need on a human nature level for wisdom. Human nature is highly integrated with your true self, and it is the seed for wisdom. Wisdom is the manifestation of the overall state of life, all the laws of the universe, the chi condition, the brain structures, the body. And with consistent effort in clearing unhealthy patterns, you can attain the result of gaining true understanding, and you can attain your true self and realization. Now let's go back into the text of Yanzi. From all these memories and from this connection with your human nature, for example, when a person is extremely hungry, the thought of stealing or robbing food can arise and even be acted upon. Or when a child is not receiving adequate love and care, the need will drive the child to develop negative emotions or behavior, such as crying or throwing a tantrum to attract the parent's attention. In extreme cases, a child can even create sickness to express this yearning for love and care from a deep level of human nature. When a person does not exercise adequate awareness and self-control, and unhealthy patterns are then activated, needs on the level of human nature can be either suppressed or overly expressed. So everything I've just counted out for you from the 10 fundamental needs and qualities of human nature. Yeah? So when we don't when we don't have enough awareness and self-control, and any of these patterns, the unhealthy patterns, activate themselves, that's when we either suppress some human needs or they become excessively big. This is the tricky part when we work with patterns, and it's what I've referred to before. Yes, when when we when we are on this path, some patterns might get stronger because of this, because we are learning to increase our self-awareness and self-control. And we can do that better and better in this process, following the laws better and better. But we're not there yet completely. So some of the needs we suppress, or they will become exaggerated, and that includes maybe tiredness. That can include the need to eat more or to not eat, depending on individually where we are. Yeah. But any of these can happen. Any of the 10 needs can become more or be suppressed. And either of those can cause human nature to become twisted. When human nature is twisted, it can further impact patterns. Eventually, negativity will manifest on activities at both the consciousness and the behavioral levels. So the social and cultural environment is another reason for origins and background. Although human society and culture have been progressing, the forces and influences for the advancement of health and growth have not dominated the many other influences. This can be observed in most areas of society, including the fields of economics, culture, politics, religion, armed forces, entertainment, and media. Not only do the influences that promote the development of healthy and positive consciousness and patterns not outweigh the opposite influences. No, they don't even match them yet. So this is a really interesting aspect, This is very honest of Yance. We have to understand that everything that exists within the economical, cultural, political, religious, armed forces, entertainment, and media aspects does not match yet the wisdom of the universe. It is important to allow that in so we can make decisions that are actually beneficial. Decisions about the difficulty of choosing which information. Because it is not difficult to see how mass media, including entertainment products and computer games, has provided a large amount of negative information, which is highly likely to influence people's consciousness, shaping values and patterns of the consciousness, especially in young people. So Now we're not in the evolution anymore, right? Or in human nature coming and resulting from evolution. Now we need to go into the here and now and see how we are influenced by the value system for this pattern to further keep existing, this unhealthy pattern of negativity. Also, the family environment plays a role here. The link between family environment and the formation of negative patterns is obvious. The kick the cat effect is a good example of such a link. Negative information can be passed on from one person to another, and children are especially susceptible to this type of influence. What is the kick of the cat effect? Well, it is like this. Let's say someone's father has not yet attained realization wisdom, so this person is still under the influence of maybe the disregard or the disapproval of their own dad or mother or teacher or any other person, maybe some boss. So they are functioning through the patterns and they feel under pressure and they don't feel free. And so what we've heard is that maybe we want to retaliate or destroy or hurt others. We want to defend ourselves. And we can sometimes only do this from resulting from this pattern to wanting to retaliate. We don't know how else to get rid of the hurt, and so we hurt others. Well, we feel not empowered enough to retaliate towards that father. No, we probably retaliate towards maybe our son or daughter. And those then go through the same thing and will retaliate towards their cat or dog. Someone lower in the hierarchy, someone where we feel powerful enough to retaliate in security, in safety, maybe, yeah. We see that, of course, in the bigger picture. A country would probably never go to war if it's, not for something else than for freedom. If we could, if you are so much smaller and there's no chance of winning. So we might suppress some other ethnicity that is even weaker than we perceive ourselves, and so on and so on. The most critical time for the formation and development of the patterns of the consciousness is from early childhood to young adulthood. From early childhood to young adulthood. Family members, especially parents, are most influential in the process of patterns development during this period. An authoritative, oppressive, or abusive parenting style could cause problematic patterns in a child on many levels of life, including behavioral, psychological, personality, and human nature levels. For example, if a parent seldom uses affirmative language, but instead often makes negative judgments of a child, such as, "You are lazy, you are not smart, you are good for nothing," etc., etc., there is a high chance that the child will develop one of two opposite types of personality. Either one is having a low level of confidence and self-esteem, being very timid, very fearful, very dependent, very eager for approval, and pessimistic. The other personality type is being overly confident, arrogant, overly sensitive and suspicious, self-centered, and short-tempered. Remember how we heard before that when this pattern is having a lot of influence on us, human nature can become twisted. So we're not relaxed, calm, and natural anymore. We don't experience the natural state of trust. Trust that we are being provided with everything we really need, etc. So as the twisting continues, you might actually even have some of the two personalities, and then it's even more confusing. So sometimes you might be timid and have a low self-esteem, and sometimes in some areas you might be overly confident or overly sensitive. So this week and this pattern really invites you to allow yourself to go back in time and make peace with that kicking of the cat effect in your family. To allow the hurts come up, acknowledge it, but then put it to rest with wisdom. Education is another aspect of the origins and background. Education has evolved and progressed enormously in the last few decades in both content and delivery. However, there is still a lot of room for improvement in fulfilling the need to help people gain better understanding of life and the world for the purpose of uplifting them. The focus of education is still on acquiring knowledge and skills needed for a successful professional life. I will repeat this because it's a big one. The focus of education is still on acquiring knowledge and skills needed for a successful professional life rather than creating a healthy and growing life and fulfilling the purpose of life. So, a successful professional life rather than a wisdom life. When you really connect with this in your heart, when you really connect with that from an education point of view, well, you know, what's coming up for you. You have been in education. You probably can't change it anymore. It's in the past. But now, right here, right now, listening to this is an education, isn't it? That's what we do in Ren Xue. We learn and we study. And the intention is to increase wisdom. Maybe we need to make room of some old information, some old knowledge. Yeah? and replace it with this sort of knowledge that we're learning here in Ren Xue. But of course, that's up to you, right? But can you see how ingrained this background and origin might be from education? In every area of life, economics, politics, cultural, traditions, health, care systems. If you can completely make an infection disappear through one of the Wujin qualities, is there some updating needed in your system regarding what you've learned about infections? It is no wonder that education can actually contribute to the development of unhealthy consciousness and unhealthy patterns. This is inevitable when there is not enough emphasis on helping people understand emotions, especially unhealthy emotions, and how to deal with them. Let's look at the personal factors here. Although many external factors participate in the formation of the pattern of negativity, we cannot deny that our own Shen, consciousness, Xinling, the heart, and our human nature are also involved in this process of forming this pattern. Since each of them has autonomy and initiative. So, Shen has autonomy and initiative. Your consciousness has autonomy and initiative. Your heart, your Xinling, your heart consciousness has autonomy and initiative. And your human nature also have autonomy and initiative, meaning they all can act autonomously and initiate thoughts and behavior. In other words, we are not entirely passive in this process. We are not mere victims or products of the work of external factors. Connect with this in a positive way now, because that means that you are empowered, that you are in power, that you have the authority and the autonomy to initiate positive change. As long as it sorry, here we go again. I'm trying again. As long as this process happened automatically because we weren't aware enough, that's because why negative patterns, unhealthy patterns, were able to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But that's the only reason. So, as we looked at unfounded suspicions last week, and as you've done this practice the last week over daily, or not, this is one of the biggest unfounded suspicions, right? The thought that I cannot change to the better. It's an unfounded suspicion. It is not the truth. It is not the total reality. You can change with awareness and effort. You can change. Patience and compassion for yourself, and you can change. We can change. Oh, here we go. Actually, Jans is saying this. After all, there are many opportunities for an individual to use self awareness, initiative, autonomy, and realization to identify and understand negative patterns and to make adjustments or changes, instead of allowing them to act and affect one's own life and the outer world again and again, and eventually the patterns become stronger and even more fixed. I was laughing because I was happy um, that I obviously came up with similar information than Janse. So that's nice to know. It's nice to know that I'm not leading you on. That made me chuckle a little bit there. And with a little bit of humor, with humor we can actually really retain information much better. So you have self-awareness, you have initiative, you have autonomy, and you have realization. And you can use it all to identify and understand patterns that are unhealthy, and you can make adjustments and changes. So this has been the origin and the background. Let's look at general and specific manifestations. Oh, this is going a bit long today. General and specific manifestations. The manifestations of the patterns of negativity include being attracted to or focusing on negative things, being attracted to or focusing on suspicion, to being overly worried, fear, lack of sense of security, being overly self-protective, and even rejecting those who sincerely offer help, and a strong resistance or rebellion. So, makes me chuckle again. Remember the story in the beginning of the class when I told you about the resistance and why songs and so on? Because this is what this pattern does to us. We are attracted to the worries and the fear and the lack when this pattern is active, and we are actually resisting help. Common causes of this pattern when formed are at a young age are the separation of parents, lack of proper love and care, lack of proper guidance, lack of a healthy connection and interaction with people, including peers, and rejection by others. This pattern can also contribute to the development of a personality that is suspicious, cynical, critical, and pessimistic. So remember this when you have trouble with other people being like this as well, not just yourself. You can use it to not needing to react so much to that, because you know it's only their patterns, and you can connect to it. Wow, maybe their parents have separated, maybe there was lack of proper love and care, proper guidance, no healthy connection between their friends or other people, etc., etc. The pattern of negativity can also manifest as self-importance, the belief that no one can understand or help us. No one is trustworthy enough, believing only in oneself, feeling safe only when things are under our control. One characteristic of this pattern is the presence of a strong reason to justify the negativity and the negative emotions. A common example is worrying about the worst case scenario and justifying it as the need to be prepared. Because not only could it happen, but it could happen at any time. Although the worry seems perfectly justified, the thinking and expectation will configure the consciousness into a negative pattern and eventually trap the warrior more and more deeply into this pattern. What are other common manifestations of the pattern of negativity? Only seeing the negative, the depressing side or quality of everything. Cynicism and anger about people and the world in general. I'm chuckling. That used to be me so much. Seeing human nature as negative and ugly. Being unwilling to cooperate or collaborate. Being overly cautious and defensive. Doubting everything, including oneself. Being indecisive. Tending to avoid one's own problems or blame others. The fear of failure. The fear of losing face. The fear of challenges. Easily feeling frustrated. Lacking motivation or driving force for change. Lacking perseverance and self-discipline. Tending to find excuses and to avoid responsibility. Low self-esteem. Lack of courage, weak willpower. Lack of trust in one's ability and potential. Lack of confidence in one's own wisdom. Lack of confidence in one's future and feeling hopeless. Phew, that's a mouthful, right? The manifestations. But how helpful it is to recognize ourselves in that. The validity and advantage of this pattern. Negativity and positivity should not be taken in absolute terms. From the perspective of Ren Xue, nothing in the universe is absolute. In other words, everything is a totality and has at least two sides, including negativity itself. Let's use a story to illustrate the point here. 3 kids were playing by a river. All of a sudden they saw a cat fall from a tree into the river. They got extremely worried and anxious, but unfortunately, none of them could swim. Two of the kids jumped into the river to save the cat, and the other one was too afraid, so he stayed on the river bank. He saw the other two kids struggling in the rapids and got extremely scared. At this time, people happened to walk by, so the kid asked them to help. One of the kids was saved, but the other one unfortunately drowned. The cat swam to the other side of the river safely. So, what happened in this story? If we look at the two kids who jumped into the river to save the cat, we can say their action showed they were positive, loving, and courageous. The other kid appeared to be cowardly and somewhat selfish, which are normally seen as very negative qualities. Looked at from the perspective of social morality, the two kids that jumped, their deeds deserved praise. However, if we look a little deeper, we could say that the way the kid who didn't jump dealt with the matter was even more reasonable and more sensible for the following reasons. One, he couldn't swim and was unfamiliar with the river environment, so it was sensible to not jump into the river to save the cat. Two, it was also a sensible decision that he didn't jump in to try to save the other two kids because he would face the same dangers that they did. Three, he asked adults for help, and that saved one of the two kids. What he did not only protected himself, but also made a positive influence on the outcome. 4. From the perspective of development, what happened on that day was not the end of the story. What could be learned from that experience would continue to have its influence. For example, learning the fact that cats can swim and therefore it isn't necessary to jump into the river to save a cat. What is the right thing to do for a child who cannot swim under these circumstances? Many useful lessons can be extracted from this experience, and they will have an ongoing positive influence into the future. The point to highlight here is that it is not always straightforward when it comes to knowing what is positive and negative, especially when we expand our scope of view. From a wide perspective, hardly anything is absolutely positive or negative. They often coexist as two different aspects of one thing. It is therefore advisable to avoid a black and white view when judging something. Although it is advisable to avoid absolute judgments, it is still necessary to know that the nature of things in relative terms. We just need to always bear in mind that even a seemingly simple and straightforward thing can be more complex than we think, especially considering the constant change and development it undergoes. A seemingly negative thing could lead to a positive outcome as a result of change and development. The story of the man who lost his horse best exemplifies this point as well. We've heard that story in the polarized thinking pattern. When we judge whether something is positive or negative, it is necessary to take the perspective of totality, seeing how it changes and develops and what outcomes it brings about, rather than just the superficial manifestations. This perspective is also important for us to know how to direct or transform development into a positive direction. Yeah. So this is for the question when we ask ourselves, what are the reasons for its existence and why am I still holding on to them? Yeah. A process of development, pardon me. Seeing it from the totality, seeing that we need the challenges, we need the fears, we need the pressure from inside. We wouldn't go look for the true self, we would never attain it, not in 100 lifetimes, if we wouldn't have problems, if we wouldn't have disease, if we wouldn't have tiredness, if we wouldn't have all these challenges, we wouldn't move. Are they really negative? So do we have to react in negativity towards those things? Let's look at the possible negative effects. Human consciousness is always doing something. There are always activities on the consciousness level. Every activity has a value on the positive-negative continuum. In other words, it is either relatively positive or relatively negative. A negative activity can lead to an unhealthy change in individuals, society, and nature. If activities have developed into a pattern, their effect will be continual and lasting. When a person is dominated by a pattern of negativity, it is hard to expect life to be characterized by health, happiness, well-being, and growth. Such a person would have difficulty feeling hopeful for the future. This is really hard medicine to take, really bitter medicine, right? But again, when we can see this clearly, we can use it as driving force, right? There is a real need for changing the unhealthy patterns. Let's look at the possible replacement patterns. Although our discussion here is about the pattern of negativity, withdrawal, inactivity, and pessimism, this pattern can be seen as a strong representation of all unhealthy patterns. Therefore, the Ren Xue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 model as the overall approach to changing pattern can apply. When following the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 model, using better, healthier patterns to replace unhealthy patterns is the core strategy for changing a pattern. As simple as it may seem, it is real work when changing all unhealthy patterns. In reality, anyone who attempts this knows that application of this method is neither simple nor easy. Just for you as a reminder to bring up the memory. This one is going a bit long, this class, because it just naturally flowed out of me to reinsert the information about the 10 fundamental qualities and needs of human nature before, when we went through the origins. I trust that this is good for all of us to have this information present with this pattern, because it involves all the patterns so deeply. And that's why I also will repeat the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 model real quick for your memory. The 1 in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 represents one principle. It signifies motivation, goal, process, method for changing patterns. And this one principle is using a better pattern to replace a relatively less good one. The number 2 represents 2 determinations. Choose to first do the healthier pattern. Choose to do the healthier, better things. And number 2, to not do the relatively more harmful things. So to have these 2 determinations. Yeah? To do more of the healthier stuff and to not do the relatively harmful things. 2 determinations. Number 3 represents the 3 paths to change behaviors, to increase Yuan Gong cultivation, so to practice the 9 methods, and to study the theories. And number 3, to change consciousness. Behavior, Yuan Gong, and consciousness. Those 3 paths of change. The number 4 represents the 4 steps. Recognition and willingness is 1, to recognize a pattern and the willingness to change it. The number 2 is understanding and identifying problematic patterns. Yeah? To gain understanding and to identify them within you. Number 3 is to facing them with courage. And number 4 is changing by replacing. So those are the 4 steps. Recognizing and willing to change, understanding and identifying them within you, 3 to face them, and 4 to change by replacing them. And the number 5 in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 model represents the Wushin. Let's look at the 5 Shin cultivation. All of the 5 Shin qualities are important for changing the pattern of negativity. Especially trust, openness, and love are important. In fact, the strong presence of any of these 3 qualities, trust, openness, and love, can have a huge or even dramatic impact on this pattern. Another Shin quality that can be very helpful for changing the pattern of negativity is acceptance. The cultivation of this quality can address one of the roots of this unhealthy pattern. Shen, or consciousness, being unable to accept reality. Whether in the past or the present, whether internal or external. Learning to accept things that we find difficult to face can be a turning point. The first step in changing the pattern and also our perception of reality. From there, we can progress to the next step, which is doing things that can help transform the situation for the better. This way, we turn the momentum of the pattern into a driving force to move life forward. And the last 3 sentences of Jance's information is a conclusion about the pattern of negativity. Since the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 model was previously presented as the best overall approach for changing patterns, why is it being reintroduced for this particular pattern? There are 2 considerations. Number 1, although the model has been available for some time, it hasn't been actively promoted as the method for changing patterns. It is highlighted here with the hope that it can be better known and utilized. Number 2, through applying this model on this particular pattern, one can gain a true understanding of the model and its meaning and value. Hopefully, this will lay the foundation and path for working on other patterns. So negativity pattern is very, very powerful, but it's false. It's from the false self, right? The true self is more powerful. Now let's go ahead and go into silence so that the information can be unified. Please sit up if you can, lifting up from Bai Hoi. Draw your vision back if you have had opened your eyes. Relax. Lift Hoi in. Open your heart, make yourself one with all of the Qi field. You can drop right into a deep state. Trust Ling Yuan. Trust the Qi field. Feel the love and support. Trust your true self. It is always there. Awareness in your heart. It is unified with your Shen Yi. Your heart, the best inquirer, will ask the questions you need to be free. And your Shen, E, with its infinite potential and wisdom, will respond and bring you information and understanding. Now forget all words. Do you recognize the pattern of negativity, withdrawal, inactivity, and pessimism? What are the manifestations of this pattern in your life? What are the causes and the formation of the development of this pattern in your life? What are the reasons of existence of this pattern in your life, and why are you still holding on to those reasons for it to exist in your life? What are the possible negative effects in your life? What is your intention in regard of what to do with this pattern? What replacement information can be applied inside your practice and outside in your daily life? And once you have allowed that process to flow through your consciousness and heart, then go ahead and accept and affirm. Invite your heart and your Shen to accept and affirm the new patterns into your life. With the whooshing one by one, confirm, affirm, and trust. Sinking deeper and deeper into unification and silence now. Trusting your true self.